Today, if you like small and adorable, then we have the ride for you as we check out the latest little package from the Euro scene. It's tiny, it's cute, it's...
What are you talking about? This show's called Trucks.
Today on Trucks, it's the big show, and it's big news when Stacey unveils the biggest, baddest crate motor ever to come from the Big Three, and he's putting it in Project Copperhead. And speaking of big, how about 44-inch boggers rolling on 2.5-ton Rockwells? Now that's big. It's the outrageous custom Kaiser M715, and it's all today on Trucks.
Hey, welcome to Trucks. This show is about big stuff, big trucks, big engines, big projects. But before we take you into this huge M715 and show you why it is so cool, well, we need to do some work. Mainly, we need to put a drivetrain in our '67 Chevy truck. Now, for those of you that don't know anything about this project, let me bring you up to date on what we've done so far. Now, the first thing that we did is completely upgrade the front and rear suspension and brakes with kits from Early Classic Enterprises. Then we put in a huge Dana 60 and brakes from DTS. Now, it is time for the drivetrain, but not just any old drivetrain. Now, keep in mind, this project is called Copperhead, and I've been teasing you the last couple weeks, telling you that that engine is going to be super nasty. And just how bad? Well, let's go take a look at it. Okay, you've probably guessed that the engine I'm going to use on this project is some sort of Chevy crate engine, and you'd be right. But before I show you what it is, I need to tell you how this thing came into existence. Now, a few years ago, when crate engines started to get popular, well, Chevy came out with their huge 502. Man, it was great. It was the biggest thing out there. Well, it wasn't long until Ford came out with their 514. Man, it was great. Everybody loved that. Well, Dodge decided to get in on the act, and they not only reissued the Hemi, but they punched it out to 528 cubic inches. Man, everybody was happy about that. Everybody except Chevy. They were not happy. Matter of fact, they were ticked off because the 502 was now the smallest big block out there. So they decided it was time to pull out the big stick and kick some butt, and this is what they came out with. What you're looking at is a 572 cubic inch crate engine. It's kicking out 620 horsepower and 650 foot-pounds of torque. Now wait a minute, let me repeat that to you. This is a 572 cubic inch engine. It's been dynoed at 620 horsepower at the flywheel, and it's kicking out 650 foot-pounds of torque. Now, I know those numbers can be a little bit mind-boggling, but wait a minute, it gets even better. This thing is pulling 9.5 to 1 compression, and it's pulling those kind of torque and horsepower numbers on 93 octane pump gas. Which means this thing won't overheat in traffic, it'll idle in traffic, it's street legal. And you can buy one in the crate. Now, let me put this in perspective for you. Most of the classic muscle cars of the 60s had 450 horsepower under the hood. The awesome Shelby Cobra had around 500. Even the Dodge Viper only kicks out around 500 horsepower. Am I making my point? Nobody has built a more powerful crate engine. Now, this thing has been in development for over a year, and what you're looking at is the very first production engine. We got it before any of the magazines, any of the other TV shows. We got the very first one for Project Copperhead. Matter of fact, most people don't even know this thing exists, including Ford and Dodge, which means that if they're watching the show, they just spilled their pretzels all over them and they're running for the phone in a state of panic. I love it. Now, as you can see, this is a gearhead's dream of all the best stuff. You got forged steel crank and rods. You've got forged aluminum pistons. You have huge aluminum heads filled with monstrous valves. You have a special tall deck intake topped with a Demon 850 carburetor. You also have an HEI distributor, wires, plugs, everything's installed. This is ready to drop in and go. Now, so you don't mistake the new 572 for any other big block, they come with special valve covers and they're all powder coated orange. Okay, if you are not weak in the knees yet, well, just bear with me because you will be. Now, the question that comes up is, what kind of transmission do you put behind an engine like that? A motor like that would snap most transmissions like a matchstick. Well, we went to B&M and got one of their super strong Turbo 400s, had them put a shift kit in it, and we also had them put on their Trick aluminum pan. That'll help out in the cooling department. Now, to go with that, we also got one of their 2500 stall torque converters, a new transmission mount, their super cooler to keep everything cool for us, and finally their light truck mega shifter so we can control the whole thing. Now, this combination will easily handle the output of that monster motor. To install the torque converter, pour in a quart of tranny fluid. Now, we are using B&M's synthetic trick shift because it is specially formulated for performance transmissions. Now, make sure that you're well lubed around this stub shaft as well as this seal so you don't rip it when you put the torque converter in. Then take the torque converter, just slide it onto the input shaft. There we go. Now, make sure that the torque converter seats all the way in. Now, it needs to sit at least 7/8 of an inch behind the face of the bell housing. Very important. If you don't get it seated all the way in, when you bolt that transmission to your engine, you're going to destroy the pump inside the transmission, so make sure you do it. Now, we are ready to bolt this to that big old engine. We'll take care of that during the break. After the break, we're going to drop it all into the chassis. Make sure you come back.
After the break, Stacey gives Copperhead its venom when he plants that massive 572 and Turbo 400 tranny. And later, we're along for the ride in this muscle-bound version of Kaiser's military Jeep, the M715.
Welcome back to the shop. Now, if you're just joining us, well, shame on you. You've missed some really important stuff. First, we gave the world its first public viewing of Chevy's humongous 572 crate engine. Then, we bolted a Turbo 400 from B&M behind it for a bulletproof drivetrain. Now, we're going to put that whole assembly into the chassis of Project Copperhead. Now, obviously, we've got to have some motor mounts and a transmission crossmember to hold that combination. But it's not as tough as you think. Remember, the 67 through 72 trucks, one of their options was a big block. So, we made a call to Early Classic Enterprises, got one of their transmission cross members, a couple of new motor mounts, and their engine pedestals. All right, the first thing we'll do is bolt the engine pedestals into the chassis. Then I'll get this new cross member into place. I'll follow that by bolting the motor mount to the engine. Then just lower the engine and tranny into place and bolt it in. Man, is that awesome or what? Man. Now, like I said before, that built Turbo 400 tranny is the only thing that's going to be able to handle that kind of power output. A 700 R4 would not have a prayer. Now, a lot of you guys might be thinking, well, that's too bad because it'd be kind of nice to have that overdrive like a 700 R4 has when you're tooling down the interstate. And that would be right. So, we are going to put an overdrive behind this, but something that'll handle that kind of power output. Come on over here. This is the gear vendor's overdrive. Now, this thing bolts right behind the transmission and it'll handle up to 1,200 horsepower. Now, the kit includes the adapter, a new yoke, all the harnesses and hookups, and of course, the overdrive unit itself. Now, the best part about this is you can shift it manually. Now, let me show you how this thing works. Okay, with the overdrive in the automatic position, you get a 22% overdrive. This is like having a whole extra gear on the top end. Very similar to a 700 R4. Now, let's say you want to shift this thing manually. Well, you can get this foot switch, Or you can get this really cool shifter handle with the button installed. Kind of like nitrous, but this is a lot better. Let me show you how. Say you shift down to first, go to first overdrive. Second, second overdrive. Third, third overdrive. Say you're getting ready to climb a steep hill and you need to go down to second, but second's going to be too low. Go to second, overdrive. This thing literally turns your 3-speed into a 6-speed. Now this is great if you're road racing or drag racing, or if you're hauling or towing equipment or trailers or trail riding, even serious rock crawling. Now you've got some shifting choices. I'm going to show you how easy it is to put that overdrive in, but I'm going to have to wait till after the break. We'll see you in a few minutes.
When Trucks returns, we button it up with overdrive and a trick set of headers. That's next. Just can't get enough of trucks? Check us out online at truckstv.com.
Welcome back to Trucks and our awesome drivetrain for Project Copperhead. Now, we already have the engine and transmission in. Now it is time to deal with that overdrive. Now, to install the gear vendor's overdrive, this stock tail shaft has got to come off. Grease the bushing and the seal in the extension, and then install the extension. Then grease the coupler inside and out, and then slide it into the extension onto the transmission tail shaft. Then just slide the overdrive unit on and bolt it up. Okay, that takes care of the installation of this overdrive unit, but not the overall installation. Up to now, we have been really lucky that this engine and transmission and stuff is just pretty much bolted into place. But as you can see, we got a little problem here. Overdrive is hitting this cross member, but the solution looks pretty easy. So we're just going to jack up the transmission, and we'll just tap this cross member forward until the tranny mount sits right down on top of it. Well, that seemed like a pretty easy fix. Now, in doing this, we have actually raised the mounting point of the transmission about 1 inch. Now, there's some things you need to be really aware of when you start doing this. First, you need to make sure that the engine has the proper tilt to the rear, about 3 to 4 degrees. Oh, that's right on. Number 2, take some measurements, make sure that your transmission assembly is not going to hit the floor of the cab. If it is, you need to lower the mount or modify the floor of the cab. And number 3, take an old drive shaft, make sure that you are going to have clearance through the cross member, through the full range of motion. Now this is going to be close, but we have plenty of room. Okay, now that we've got everything fitting properly, we'll go ahead and just re-drill our holes in our cross member, and we will bolt this sucker on. Finally, now that we have the drivetrain in, we can lower the rear of the chassis down to ride height, according to the measurements we got from Early Classic Enterprises. Then we'll center up the axle and set the pinion angle to match that of the output of the overdrive. Then we'll just weld these perches onto the axle. Oh yeah, that looks good. All right, another thing we're going to deal with today is the issue of headers. Now for those, we went to Sanderson, got a set of these long tube headers for the 67 through 72 Chevy truck with the big block. Now, like all Sanderson headers, they have a very thick flange, so that's not going to warp on you. They have a nice smooth bend, so these things will flow like a mother. And they also have the jet hot coating, so they'll always look good. Now, the big question is, how well are they going to fit that new 572 block? And the answer is, well, like a glove. The engineers at Sanderson did their homework on these. And you can see we've got just enough room to clear everything. All right, that finishes up the drivetrain for Project Copperhead. Is this awesome or what? Man, I told you it was worth the wait. Now, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to unleash that thing, and you don't want to miss that.
When we come back, it's time to sit down and hold on as we churn up some crop circles in the incredible customized Kaiser M715. That's next. And now truck gear, parts, tools, and equipment for pickups and sport utilities.
You know, one question that I get asked a lot is how hard is it to put a V8 into an S10 pickup? Well, the answer to that really depends on your mechanical ability, but there is a kit out there that takes care of the hard part of this kind of swap, and it comes from Advanced Adapters. Now, the kit comes with motor mounts that literally allows you to bolt a small block Chevy into an S10, and all of your clearances with your firewall and radiator are all taken care of. Now, another problem part with this kind of swap is in the exhaust. So this kit comes with a special set of headers so you don't have any problems there. Now, the best part about this is this kit goes for about 500 bucks. That, my friends, is a deal no matter what your budget is. There is nothing more frustrating than building a totally cool street truck, spending hours on the paint and bodywork, and then the first time that you raise the hood or tonneau cover, oh, off comes a piece of paint. Oh! Well, the problem is in your hinges, and the answer comes from Saxy's Rod Shop in the form of these lightweight, built-right hinges. Now, this is an aluminum hinge, and as it pivots, it moves the two surfaces out and away from each other, so you never have to worry about scratching or marking your paint. Now, these come in a couple different sizes. They're perfect for mounting a hood or a tonneau cover or, heck, even a tilt front end. Now, you can pick these up for 170 bucks for a pair. Saxy's Rod Shop is where you got to go. Man, the awesome Kaiser M715. Built by the military for just a couple years in the late 60s, this is pretty much the ultimate Jeep truck. Super strong right from the factory. But that wasn't good enough for Chad Molitor. Nah. You see, Chad does some serious off-roading, so he needed a serious rig. So, using the M715 as a starting point, well, here's what he built. The weakest part of any M715 was the engine. So, the first thing that Chad did was dump the old stock engine, stick in a 94 LT1. And this gives him a solid 300 horsepower and fuel injection for those steep, tough obstacles. One of the coolest things about these big old trucks, though, is the removable canvas top and the flip-down windshield. However, Chad added to that by taking the original doors and cutting them down into roadster-style doors, so jumping in and out is a snap. The interior was treated to a full roll cage that not only protects the driver, it also holds racing-style seats and harnesses so you don't accidentally get thrown out. One of the biggest changes to the Kaiser, though, is the huge axles and tires it sits on. Now, the axles are 2.5-ton Rockwells packed with 671 gears and Detroit lockers. Now, the tires are monstrous 44-inch boggers that are held on with custom beadlock rims, and they have a tread similar to what you'd find on a John Deere tractor. But that's not all. To help this big old truck go places that, say, a Jeep can, the rear axle's outfitted with hydraulic steering. Now, one of the incredible benefits of rear steering is you can put the rear end just about anywhere you want to. This is really cool on tight trails or a big, deep mud hole. The rear steering will also cut your turning radius in half. Now, if you mash down on the throttle, this will allow you to cut some of the most amazing donuts you've ever seen. To increase the departure angle, the rear of the bed was shortened 6 inches, and yet all the military blackout lights and tailgate were retained for a stock look. And you're right, it's virtually unstoppable. But what you may not expect is how well a rig this big can crawl rocks and tough obstacles. The rear steering makes it nimble enough to go places that you normally could only take a smaller rig like a Jeep or a Bronco. Now, like I said at the beginning, the Kaiser M715 was an awesome vehicle in stock form. But when you take one and you put it on steroids like Chad did, well, it becomes one of the most incredible things on 4 wheels, no matter what kind of trail you're on.
Next week on Trucks, Project Crazy Horse is back in the stable and ready for some horses of its own, 390 to be exact. And later, Stacey gives us a taste of the Tundra, Toyota style. That's all next week on Trucks. For a VHS copy of today's show, call toll-free 1-877-853-7260. Show videos are just $12.95 plus shipping and handling. Trucks is an RTM production.